Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can all hear me well, and hopefully you can see my camera as well. My name is Lucie Baumel. I'm director of EGVIA, the European Green Vehicle Initiative Association. I'm pleased to welcome you today for this first Get Lunch with 2.0 event. This event is part of a series of web meetings we will organize at lunchtime during the month of June to give stakeholders more information about the content of the Towards Zero Emission partnership. Before going into a very brief presentation of the overall context of the partnership, I would like to give you just some basic rules for the organization of the meeting. So please make sure that you keep your microphone muted during the presentation so that we don't have any issue with the different presenters. We want to organize a meeting that would be as interactive as possible. We all know that this is very challenging being online, but nevertheless, we wanted to book this lunch time so that you would be a little bit more relaxed and try to interact as much as possible also with the different presenter we will have today. So really feel free to use the chat to raise any question you may have for the different leaders, co-leaders of this third pillar. The presentations will be available afterwards on our website, and we will share all information also with the different stakeholders after the meeting. For some of you who were there a little bit earlier, you noticed that we started the recording of the meeting, so this will also be available on our YouTube channel after the meeting. If we can go to the next slide, I just would like to start the meeting by giving you a very short and brief overview of the 2.0 partnership. And then I will give the floor to the different pillars leaders so that they can go a little bit more in depth into the third pillar, the topic of today. Who we are with the 2.0 partnership. Most of you must be aware by now that we are not starting this initiative from scratch. We are building upon the green vehicles and the green cars initiatives that have been funded by the European Commission and organized with stakeholders for the past 10 years, slightly more than 10 years now. We will involve public side represented by different DGs of the European Commission under the lead of DG RTD, and the association, which is representing by EGVIA, which will evolve soon into a new association, gathering still members of the private side of the partnership, which means public and private, industry and research, stakeholders that are involved in achieving the objective of the 2.0 partnership. What our main objective and our main activities within this partnership is to provide research recommendation to the European Commission for the 2.0 goals, to disseminate information within the community, and to promote the partnership and its collaborative aspect and collaborative cooperation. For the time being, we have 99 members, but we hope that we will continue to grow with this 2.0 partnership, which have an enlarged scope compared to the initiatives that were previously existing. And we also hope that after this meeting, you will see also interest to be more involved in the 2.0 partnership, whether by joining consortium and submitting projects or by being directly involved in the association. If we go to the next slide, then we will see the different objectives of the 2.0 partnership. And here you will see that, of course, we are planning to make really a very important contribution to the Green Deal. So one of our main objectives is to contribute to achieve carbon neutrality in road transport by 2050. So this is really fully aligned with the Green Deal objective of the European Commission. But at the same time, we want to improve European competitiveness and achieve technology leadership at European level. So again, to strengthen the European ecosystem and to make Europe a leader in road transport technologies. And as any of the activities that we are doing at European level and in coordination with the European Commission, of course, to improve health and quality of life for the European citizens. And to do this, we defined our activities under 4 main pillars. This will be 4 pillars that will be presented to you in June, every Tuesday. And today we'll start with the presentation of the 3rd pillar, which is entitled Innovative Concepts, Solutions and Services for Zero-Emission Mobility of People and Goods. But as you can see, this pillar, the 3rd pillar, is integrated really with all the other one. The pillar 1 will be focusing on vehicle technologies and propulsion solution. The second one will be focusing on all topics related to the integration of battery electric vehicles into the grid. And the 4th one will be a transversal aspect covering LCA and circular economy. If we go to the next slide, you can see that similarly to what we have done in green cars, but mostly in green vehicles, we will cover all types of road transport vehicles from two-wheeler to heavy duty. But the novelty really of the 2-0 partnership compared to green vehicle is that we will only focus on zero tailpipe emission solutions. That will include, of course, battery electric vehicles for all types of application and fuel cell electric vehicles for heavy duty applications only. And of course, the 2-0 partnership will not work in silo. We will have an overall ecosystem also working with us. And in the next slide, we can see that we will also interact with many other partnerships. Okay, thank you, Bianca. So you can see, obviously, clean hydrogen and batteries will play a key role by providing enabling technologies and building blocks that are necessary for the integration at the level of 2-0. But we will interact with a number of additional partnerships, including cooperative, connected and automated mobility, the CCAM partnership, but also key digital technologies, the follow-up of Excel, which will again provide some enabling technologies that we need for the integration at 2-0 level. So you should really see that 2-0 is acting at a system level by integrating several technologies, but we are not working only with the 2-0 partnership and the 2-0 network. We really want to have a deep coordination with all the other initiatives that are launched at EU level. And I think that was it for the very general overview of the 2-0 partnership. Bianca, if you can just go to the next slide, so I'm sure I didn't forget anything. As I was mentioning, we want to give you some insight about what you can expect from the 3rd pillar. So the idea is not to go into detail about all the research and innovation priorities we identify, but really to have a more kind of relaxed meeting. Hopefully you managed to already prepare your lunch and now you can sit, listen to the different co-leaders presenting you this 3rd pillar, and really try to get the opportunity to ask any questions you have about what are the main expectations that we have from this pillar and how this will be interacting with the other initiatives and with the other pillars of the partnership, because you should really see this pillar interacting with all the rest of the 2-0 partnership. So without further delay, I would like to give the floor to the co-pillars or co-leaders of the pillar 3, Fernando Lieza and Evangelos Bekiaris. And I want also to thank again Sabina Azanova from Polis, who is unfortunately not able to join us today, but also contributed a lot to the preparation of this 3rd pillar of the 203. Fernando, Evangelos, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Lucy, for the very nice introduction to the 2-0 partnership. And first of all, I would like to thank the co-chairs that I have introduced, but also we have been in close contact with other stakeholders within the working group that we established to define the research and innovation agenda and these objectives. And in particular, I would like to mention Umberto Guida from UIPP that has also contributed strongly to to this pillar. And the question addressed within this pillar is quite clear. So what needs to change in the way we use the vehicles and transport system to speed up the adoption of zero-emission vehicles and make them competitive compared to current vehicles? We clearly know that the technologies that are behind zero-tailpipe emissions, fuel cell electric and battery electric vehicles, have very good capabilities and development pathways, but in some segments are still not competitive with running technologies. In some segments, they are not even available solutions, talking on heavy duty, long distance freight transport. So then this is the key question that we need to address. So how, from the user perspective, we can make sure these vehicles are integrated in the operations on both goods and people mobility. And to address that, what we focus in this pillar is indeed to develop and expand the portfolio of zero-tailpipe emission mobility and logistics use cases. So we want to explore this type of vehicles in the different use cases, and in particularly addressing those in which the impacts of current usage is higher, so then we can benefit for extensive emission reduction when these vehicles are adopted for these particular use cases. And of course, here the idea is that we do it in a very integrated way, from the vehicle infrastructure, but also considering operations and services, so we can serve the demand of transport effectively with zero-emission vehicles. Then this is our prerequisite. On how we will do is indeed through the demonstration and validation of zero-tailpipe emission fleets and associated infrastructure, also charging. And we truly believe, and this is how it's working now, we know that one of the benefits of these vehicles could be in the operation cycle. So then with low maintenance costs and sometimes also low energy costs. So then the more we use these vehicles, the better will be the financial case. So then, and that's why we think connected, shared and on-demand mobility could be a strong enabler for these vehicles, for both mobility of people and logistics. Then we will go more concretely on demonstration and validation of zero-emission fleets for people mobility and public transport, on particularly addressing high-capacity bus lines and high-demand freight transport corridors, because we think here is where an important impact can be made, focusing on these segments. But we will also test and learn from other different use cases and work on different adoption barriers that we can have, particularly how we can make this type of vehicles working in fleets with different type of vehicles in terms of assignment, management systems, driving behavior. That is very sensitive aspect for these vehicles. And last but not least, how we can increase the capacity of the people working with these vehicles at the different levels, from drivers to the management, and also to provide recommendations at policy level based on the research and innovation. And now I wanted to share the floor with Evangelos Bekeris, one of our co-leaders, in case he wants to complement this slide, and you take over.
Thanks a lot, Fernando. Just to summarize here, I think the essence is that we are targeting the bottlenecks. The bottlenecks in sense of adoption barriers, as you've seen, other specific use cases, high frequency, high capacity, high demand. And obviously, when we speak about bottlenecks, we speak about operational, technological, labor ones, like the ones at the end. And some also difficult environments. As you will see in the next slide, we speak about peri-urban and rural environments, quite important that yet have no solution. And at the end, we go to deployment, to integrated strategy, solutions, and policy recommendations for the deployment. And this indeed brings me to this slide that it's difficult to read, but let me just highlight a few only parts. The fact is that initially, as high priority in the first action, we're going to identify the capacity building tools and evaluation assessment and recommendation parts, meaning the KPIs and the tools in which we will base later the deployment strategies and scenarios. That's why this comes later. The priority, medium, higher means deployment, and this is important, but it comes later. Also, we need to, in the action 2, as high priority, develop connected services, e-services for goods and for mobility. But in order to do that, we need actions 4 and 5, which is the new applications. If we don't have the applications, we cannot enable them into services. So that is why 4 and 5 come earlier and are really high priority in order to develop these solutions. And in area 3, we need to deliver, to identify the right size vehicles. And here, as you see, freight and logistics comes first, because we all know that in the trucks area, even the small ones, we are back from the use cases in comparison to people mobility, where we already have a number of proper vehicles. So here the priority comes earlier with for the logistics, and comes stronger for the logistics than for the people in the deployment and the specification of the vehicles. All in all, as you see, most of the priorities are high and most of the actions are coming now. That's also reflected in the work program of 2.0, that you will see for each of these high early priorities there is a relevant goal identified. But also, progressively, we will move more from the infrastructure, the KPIs, from the solutions and the applications to the deployment scenarios and the integration. And with that, I think I go back to you, Fernando, for the last slide.
Maybe you can mute there is some noise. Perfect. So then, before going to the next one, I wanted to share that in the previous slide, when we see high priority or medium priority, as Evangelos said, this means that when we see a priority highs, because those topics are already addressed in the topics that will be published in the work program of the first Horizon Europe calls 21 and 22nd. So then, when we identify these topics as part of the work programs and calls, then are in high priority. For the others, we may need to wait a little bit to the second round, 23, 24. And this is the way I would recommend you to look into this picture as well. And then if we go to the next slide, just to advance, which will be the topics. And here is where, as Lucy said, we integrate the different pillars. So when we talk on particular call topics, we don't build them from one or the independent pillars. Maybe one of the topics has more focus on one or another, but it's the topics and are defined from the holistic perspective of the partnership. And the more relevant ones for this group and pillar 3 is the multi-powertrain zero-emission systems for heavy-duty vehicles, and it's here focused on both battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles, and it's, I think it's the essence of the topic is in the title. the modularity, possible combination, and particularly addressing the freight segment in long distance and heavy duty, meaning 40 tons and or more. And then particularly also looking into the efficiency and economic operation of these vehicles. The TRL level, it's 7 and 8, so then it's expected that the projects deliver functioning in almost real cases, prototypes, and they are demonstrated in those ones. And it's a topic in which we will also address some of the capacity building, how to include these vehicles in fleet management system. The same will happen in the second topic, that is innovative electric vehicles architectures for zero emission trucks for regional freight haulage. Here, the payload is lower. It's N1, N2, and N3 vector category, and also it's for shorter distance, and it's regional and urban domain where this is applied. And then there is one particular topic that is addressing the new generation of fuel electric urban and peri-urban buses, and this is quite relevant also for this pillar. And one of the elements of that or characteristics of the expected projects is the engagement with users in use cases, in actual potential applications of these vehicles, looking into the actual operations to make sure these vehicles are successfully implemented in those operations. And last but not least, also linking to the fourth pillar on life cycle analysis, there is very a demand from the users to understand which are the emissions that of these vehicles in the life cycle analysis domain, so to make sure we can measure and report reductions. So it's not only the zero-tailpipe and that it's zero emissions, we need to understand which are the implications in the whole life cycle analysis of the vehicles, and hopefully also to the usage of those vehicles. And Evangelos, if you want to complement something here.
I think you have understood by now that it's quite a holistic approach. We are covering more or less all the areas, of course, putting some priorities. These priorities are living. Based on what the other pillars will bring us and the first calls, we will have to revisit them. It's clear that new vehicle types, new infrastructure types will bring also new opportunities for services. So it's just the start. And I think it's a good balance between being specific on the priorities, but also not leaving any area of applications out. And thank you very much for this part. I think we can open it for your comments.
Thank you, Evangelos.
Thank you both. Fernando, this is Lucy speaking again. I cannot see any question in the chat for the time being, so I guess maybe people are just too busy eating and they don't really use the chat. But I would have maybe just one item, if you could maybe provide a little bit more detail. We are covering urban areas, peri-urban areas, and also rural areas. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What will be the balance between the different aspects and how they can interact also with each other, also in view of the first topics we will start with?
Evangelos, do you want to take this one?
I'm also looking at the business cases question of Guido. And I think this is kind of related, at least, if I understand it well. I think that we have to see that in each use case there are different layers. is the layer that comes from the technology, from the other pillars, but it's also the layer of the users, but always the layer of the real use case, of the business use case. And I think, and this is an advice to the industry, wherever they see one of these layers, they have always to look at the back, what is the relevant business case and what is the cost efficiency and cost effectiveness. I think this is quite important. Of course, this is related to the life cycle analysis of the next, but this is very important that here we are not just looking on technological solutions to go over barriers, but to solutions that are related to the real world, to the real business case. So if there is no business case, if there is no clear user need, this application should not be included. I don't know if there is something more that you would like, Lucy, to highlight. I'm not sure I got the whole question, but I'm open to that.
Yeah. Meantime, you were talking, Evangelos, I remind a couple of examples on how this could be working. Based on previous projects, I would like to refer to not particularly, I think, at least Transformers was in the previous initiative, and Aeroflex. Both projects, I think, have been or are being quite successful because they have a strong relation between the vehicle development, interaction with the use cases, which are the border technologies enabling those vehicles to provide added value, and in particular use cases. It's very important to understand how, at least for freight, how these vehicles are used in the real operations, because it's very different if you use these vehicles for main primary transport from factories to the distribution centers, or if you use them for the distribution part, and also depending on the payload you require, it's different. So then at the end, it's very important to look into the particular usage models and to understand these implications also in the definition of the vehicles and capabilities, and also to identify which are the segments in which could be first segments to implement successfully these vehicles, maybe not so demanding from the capacity point of view. I don't know if there are more questions, Lucy, or you have any other question yourself?
I don't have any immediate question, Fernando. Thank you. Similar as Guido, I'm always happy when we mention past projects, and especially past projects that have been relevant and included in the EGV portfolio. I see one question from Jan Fay from Bosch. Which vehicle segments are acceptable for the regional freight haulage? Since you can reply to this one.
That's a good question indeed. And maybe here even Guido could have a better answer than myself, because we have discussed intensively on this question. When we started, we wanted to address all type of segments, but as if I remember correctly, and there have not been changes lately, we are addressing N1, N2, and N3 category vehicles for freight transport. This means up to 18 tons, if I'm correct, or that. But I would recommend you go to the actual definition of the vector vehicle types, and maybe Guido can help with this. So then it's really for medium and regional freight transport, not for the long distance, and for it's heavy duty, but on these payloads below 16, 18 tons. Yes, Guido refers to the topic when it's published, and maybe here we are leaking some contents we should not, but this is also good added value. But you can expect this type of vehicles in the call N1, N2, and N3 vector categories, if I'm correct, which I assume I am. Okay.
Okay, since we don't have any question for the time being in the chat, maybe one more question from my side. It's related to the previous slide, and particularly the action 2, connected and shared e-services for people and goods mobility. In 2.0, we are mostly focusing on achieving carbon neutrality. So can you maybe elaborate just a little bit how these new services can contribute to achieve the carbon neutrality objective, and how we will interact also with other initiatives? And of course, I'm mostly thinking of the CCAM partnership.
Okay, that's good. The first question we need to make ourselves is how the vehicles are used. And for example, in the freight transport, that is a professional. So then companies live out of how much they use the trucks. The trucks are only used between 40 and 50% in the best cases. So this means that if we increase how they are used, then we need less vehicles to do the same type of activity. Then you can claim, okay, but if you use them more, then they get older faster, so then you need to replace them. But this will also help in advancing to the next generation of vehicles if the life cycles are shorter, and we achieve to do more with less. And to enable that, it's both segments. We think the only way to do that is going to more share schemes from both the people mobility and goods mobility, in which we look into the vehicles as assets in which we need to maximize the way they are used, and this could help from that point of view. And that's the angle that we would like to address with this subject. And Angelos, maybe you can also.
Yes, if I might say, first of all, of course, you understand that the base, these services formulate also the base of the services that automated vehicles in CCAM will also provide. So obviously they will be with electric vehicles, and we can start with more traditional services where you still have the driver in the loop at some level, and gradually you will move to more automated. On the other hand, the CERT is the key, as also Fernando explained, and here I'd like to say that not only we are aiming at CERT solutions for people and CERT solutions for goods, but it could also be mixed solutions where either temporarily or in the volume in the same vehicle or using the same vehicle, we can also support shared services for people and goods, either different times of the day or through the same vehicle. So actually, obviously we don't have yet all the answers, but there will be a very great, let's say, different array of services, some starting today and gradually more and more shared, mixed, and automated.
Yeah,
thank you.
Also
thank you
for,
both.
Because usage, as you said, could make the business case for a little bit more expensive assets. So that's a very good point that you raised, Evangelos. Thanks for that. And Lucy, sorry to have interrupted you.
No, it's okay, Fernando. I see 2 questions now in the chat. Let's take the latest one. Is there any preference for long-haul logistics transport between BEV and hydrogen fuel cell trucks? I'm not sure anyone would be willing to say there is a preference, but maybe you'd like to comment, and I just take the opportunity to remind everyone that when it comes to vehicle solutions, this is more Pillar 1 related activities, and this will be presented on 15th of June. But please, Fernando.
Sure. This is always the question I would have said somebody to ask me up front. So because it's the good question. From our point of view, and here I'm talking now more about Alice, we consider it's not possible to tell now which is the winning technology. And that's why instead of speaking or discussing if this technology is good or this technology is bad, what we need to do is to make sure we reduce the learning curve of both technologies, make sure these technologies are tested in different use cases, and we understand how they behave, which are the capabilities of both. And then we will have better elements to decide if there is a winning or a best technology. We had recently a session together with Hydrogen Europe, and there were very interesting presentations on scenarios for future development. What we particularly say is that for long distance and very heavy duty vehicles, 40 tons, it seems that fuel cell electric vehicles will have a lot to say in the next years, although if they are not ready to use for those segments. And I think battery electric will be moving from lower payloads, lower ranges towards higher ranges and higher payloads. And there is where maybe new use cases or use models could enable those vehicles to be used even for addressing long distance requirements. But at the end, that's why it's so important, as I said, stop talking or trying to identify which is the best technology. We need to really test them and make sure the users understand how these technologies can be used, both of them in the segments which can already have prototypes. And based on that, we can make better decisions for medium long term.
Thank you, Fernando.
Angelos, if you want to add something on that one. It's a tricky one, I know.
No, it's I'm passing on the logistics side, Fernando. You are the absolute expert, and I see another one related to logistics and digital twins, another question, so maybe you can continue still on the logistics case. What is the need of the logistics community required digital twins? I think, again, for you.
Yeah, from the logistics point of view, I don't think we need digital twins. But my feeling is that if truck OEMs can really go into this area through the digital twins, can really get better understanding on how these vehicles are used. Because sometimes you ask your customers what you need your vehicle to address, and then your customer may tell you whatever he would like to have, maybe not exactly what he or she needs. And with digital twins, I think OEMs and vehicle manufacturers can really get more insights and on how these vehicles are used, and then based on those can make better decisions in future product development. And that's why I think from the users, and could also be to tell the customers, okay, maybe you wanted to have a vehicle for doing this, but you are not actually using for that. You are doing other things with the vehicle. So then also to start some good discussion between vehicle manufacturers and users on which are the actual needs based on facts and not on opinions or that I don't say it's the case now, but sometimes it's you have a discussion, you need to have data on a good amount of data, and this is what can be provided through the digital twins.
If I might add here, I think, however, that whether it's logistics or people, and especially more for people, it's important that we look about the digital twins, because we are only going to have a number of vehicles and a number of applications. We don't know what will happen when this gets scaled up. So we actually, I think, need to use the data of our pilots to feed the models of simulation, and to a great extent use digital twins to understand the deployment scenarios at a later stage. So this has to do, of course, with maybe a later stage, not the first call, but it's coming, and I think that it's needed. With that, I would also try to address Guido's new question about for whom is Pillar 3. Of course, it's for everybody, but specifically, since we're speaking about services for the users, it is for the users, stakeholders, so the municipalities, the local governments, the haulage companies, the ones that do the logistics operation, the bus operators, so not only bus, let's say public transport, the companies, especially the companies that are using new services with shared transport, Uber-wise, or if you like, with car sharing, carpooling, using, of course, electric fleets. Not only, also power-to-wheeler ones. And of course, to all these associations that are related, that are like city associations, your cities and police, like UITP, but also the Passenger Federation, let's say the society. We need, obviously, the OEMs, we need infrastructure operators, but they are coming from the other pillars with their solutions. They need to be involved here, but here really we need the wealth of the operators, of the end users, because this is the test of the reality. This is the real case where things will either operate or will need certain modifications.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evangelos. I think you summarized really well the whole stakeholders groups that we are targeting as part of 2.0. Of course, this is maybe a little bit more valid for Pillar 3 because some of these groups, and particularly all representing the user perspectives, really will find more direct interest into this third pillar. But this is really, I think you listed really well all the stakeholders that we want to see involved in our activities in Pillar 3, but also in the other pillars. I don't see any other question. I don't know if there are further questions from the audience to the co-leaders. I would have still one question then. If maybe you can detail a little bit the action 3 and how we can link use cases to infrastructure requirement. Next week, we will have the presentation of the Pillar 2 on the 8th of June. That will be really dedicated to the integration of battery electric vehicles into the energy system. But my question is more related to the type of action we need to undertake under 2.0 to have an infrastructure for recharging that is really fitting the user needs, both for mobility and goods transportation. If you can just a little bit elaborate on this point.
Yeah, here it's not an easy question, but I would like to say that it's very important to understand the use of those vehicles and the use cases, because that defines the requirements on infrastructure. And in some cases, you require that infrastructure is public, it's available in the streets. In some cases, the bottleneck that we need to work on, it's more in the grid. For example, infrastructure reaching to the depots or places in which charging will take place, and getting a very good understanding of that needs and how to get a good picture of those needs to shape an infrastructure. And that's good. That's one. The second one is that everything, in particular for long distance, is to be built. So it's important to identify where to start with, so then we can start and propose places in which we can move faster to implementation and deployment. And there we have like winning use cases or winning geographical areas or winning places in which we can start moving from research and innovation to deployment. Of course, this is outside 2.0, but getting a good understanding on these first implementations in real operations, in real conditions with real infrastructure, and it's an important one. The other one is when we look into electrification, we work in many cases on pilots and small scale, and the question here is that, okay, how we can move from this small scale to large scale, and which are the implications for the infrastructure? Because maybe to charge 1 or 2 or 3 vehicles can work, but if you need to charge thousands of trucks in a day in a place, you need to start thinking on energy and how this needs to evolve, and there to find the right questions or problems that we will need to face in looking into, for example, this previous question. Okay, what if everything could be electrified? What this would mean for the infrastructure, how we can cope with that, and those questions I think are very critical ones that we need to start having a better understanding on answers and good questions, but also answers to those questions. And I don't know, Evangelos, if you have something to add here.
Yes, I think there are 3 layers. The one is the quantity layer. So, what is the actual need of charging stations, the actual density, for the different use cases, for the different types of users, to balance the queuing versus the cost efficiency? We don't really know, and it depends on the use case, depends on the operation, different for fleet and logistics, different if you have logistics that are perishable or logistics that can be delivered later, and so on and so on. So that is the quantity and density. There is the quality. Is it cost efficiency if we have dynamic charging, inductive charging? Are there use cases that actually would bear the additional cost because they need the real-time charging, and they need that? We would never know without the pilots and without the applications of this area. And of course, there is always, as Guido said, the business level. We are going to have different business models of charging, but also vehicle use and so on, in the different pilots, in the different regions, as very rightly said before. And then we need also to test this layer. This brings me also to the last Ian's remark, that the pillars, it's just an artifact. It's, of course, a continuation. This European partnership tries to deal with all the issues, and there are no strict barriers, because whatever we find here will come back to the requirements of the vehicles, to the requirements of the chargers, will go to the LCA analysis, and vice versa. Obviously, we just take this artificial, let's say, area, but it's obviously a continuation.
Thank you, Evangelos, for your comments and your contribution. I was just reading also the comments from Jan. There is no question, but I think it's very valid addition in the chat. I cannot see any additional questions, so I assume now would be really your last opportunity to raise question on pillar 3. Let's say priorities or expectations. So if you would like to raise additional question. Yes, Guido.
Lucy, hi, Guido speaking. Hi, and good morning again to everyone. Just on the point, Fernando, well, you were discussing on the link to the recharging infrastructure. Always remember that we're in the process also of the AFID revision, so the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive revision. And there will be some specific targets that, of course, will help also to better develop at the level of member state the recharging infrastructure. This is supposed to come in the coming weeks and months. I think already before the end of the summer, there should be a first idea of what would be the new AFID directive. In addition, coming back to 2.0, I would like to remember that 2.0 is not working in isolation, as we said, not only with the other partnership, but also with the other financial instrument developed by the European Commission. So in particular, I'm thinking, and this would be a way to link it to the CEF, Connected European Facilities. We're discussing and will be discussing in the coming weeks, months, and hopefully also years to see how there will be a specific link of the activities, because obviously what we're doing in research innovation will have a strong impact on supporting the ideas of how would be the future. And I'm expecting to have some good result that could be presented also for the CEF funding in a successive step. And I stop here. Thanks again.
Thank you, Guido. Indeed, we are 2.0 funded as part of the Horizon Europe program, but there are many other funding support from the European Union to several activities. And of course, we will make sure to have good coordination and connection also to the CEF activities. Are there any additional remark from Fernando or Evangelos, or any additional question from the floor?
Yeah, from my side, just to say that thank you, Guido, for your comment, because at the end we cannot see this in isolation. Who is looking into 2.0 in isolation, only 2.0 is losing a lot of the big picture of what's going on. In our case, we have companies that have set very demanding targets in terms of emission reduction, 50%, 40% by 2030, 2020, and they don't know yet how to achieve that. So a lot of paradigms are going to change in the next 10 years, and 2.0 will help us to get common understanding on which are the implications. Some companies are starting to think, okay, maybe transport in future is more expensive as it is today, and this is a paradigm that never happened. Always transport has been cheaper than in the past, but then we need to understand which are these implications. We are also discussing with all these regulations, 10T and AFID and weight and dimensions next year, and many others that are related. So then it's important to have everything into consideration, particularly in the instruments to smooth the transition, and saying, okay, we are also discussing on the contract for the difference, because it's not only the investment in infrastructure or investment in the vehicles, it's also on the operational cost. So then how we can start moving into a very straightforward movement in which we see progress. And there are 2.0, I think it's the key, even if it's complementary to many others, is when it's based on knowledge, understanding of the problem and potential solutions. I think 2.0 is the core instrument for the whole Europe to address that, and that's why it's so important that you are involved and looking from this. So then that's my very last remark, I would say, Lucy, and then I pass on to Evangelos, so if he can close at least from the leadership team point of view.
Thanks. I think everything is said. I'd like just to recognize and thank specifically Guido as one of the co-leaders in reality, because he helped us to stay focused, to stay specific and to stay quantified. Thank you very much. He helped us a lot in delivering here where we are. And I think it's just a start. Of course, there will be many more iterations, and I'd like to ask all the people that are here with us today, but also the ones that couldn't, to bring back to us offline any kind of feedback, because obviously it's not the end of the game, it's just the start. Thank you very much from our side.
Thank you, Evangelos. Thank you, Fernando, for these closing words and for the presentations of Pillar 3 and for this very lively discussion. I think it was a very nice overview of the challenges we are facing regarding all use cases and the different activities that we identified as part of the third pillar. And I think it was a very nice transition to the second meeting we will have next Tuesday on 8th of June. Bianca, if you can just go to the next slide. We will go a little bit more in detail this time on the pillar 2 for BEV integration into the grid, and I think this will be a nice complement to the discussions we had today. So I hope it was interesting for all of you to get to know a bit the 2.0 partnership and to get more information about Pillar 3. And I hope you will be joining us next week and also 15th of June and also 22nd of June to learn even more about the 2.0 partnership. I hope you enjoy also your lunch if you had lunch, and if not, bon appétit. I hope to see you soon, and have a nice day.
Goodbye.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye bye.